everyone, this is Hillary McElhaney. Welcome back to the Nurse Preceptor channel. I'm really glad that you're here today. I wanted to address just one topic that I wrote a blog post about 2 weeks ago. What to do when you can't find acetaminophen. I don't know if anyone else has been noticing a real shortage in acetaminophen products over the counter. Brand names for this would include Tylenol, it's probably the one that you'd most recognize, but it also comes as one of the ingredients in a number of over-the-counter cold and flu types of products. So what happens when acetaminophen is in short supply and you can't find it? What can you do instead? Acetaminophen is a medication that's available over the counter. There is an extra strength version that's a higher dosage, and then there's a regular strength dosage. The extra strength is 500 milligrams per tablet or per serving, and then the regular strength is 325. There's also a kid and infant formula. Even though they are bottled differently, the kid and the infant formula is exactly the same concentration to make it easier to do dosing. So for those of you with infants out there, you may be able to use the one that's labeled for children, but you just have to use the correct dose that you would normally use in your infant. What we use acetaminophen for is mild to moderate pain. It's frequently used for things like headache pain, joint pain, arthritis pain, muscle pain, backaches, and that kind of thing. It's also used frequently as a fever-reducing agent. It has a very minimal effect on inflammation. We've got a few over-the-counter medication substitutions that we can do that have kind of a similar end effect, just through a different mechanism. So we have ibuprofen, which is an NSAID, and then naproxen, which is also an NSAID. It stands for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And these drugs work on moderate to severe pain. They also work very effectively at reducing fever and reducing inflammation. One thing I do want to say about over-the-counter medications is you always should take time to read the back of the box and read the insert that comes in the package. Make sure that you don't have any drug-drug interactions, food-drug interactions, sensitivities or allergies to any components of the medication, and that you don't have any pre-existing conditions that would limit your use of these drugs. And only use the dosage that is recommended. Don't exceed that. There is more risk involved the higher dose you go with all of these medications, and never ever take more Tylenol than is the upper dose that's recommended on the bottle, or take it more frequently, because it can lead to liver dysfunction. The other thing we have is aspirin. So aspirin is something that is a little bit less frequently used now, mostly because it really tends to upset people's stomachs badly. And we have other medications like ibuprofen that are available that tend to work without quite so many side effects usually. Aspirin shouldn't be used in kids. I do want to say that if a kid has a viral infection, using aspirin, unless specifically instructed by a physician to do so in rare cases, it can cause a condition called Reye syndrome, which is basically swelling of the brain, and it can lead to disability and death. And I personally know a couple people who have had it. One survived, one did not. So depending on why you're taking your Tylenol or acetaminophen, I have some other things that may be helpful adjunct therapies to deal with the problem that you're taking the medication. So for fever reduction, something that we use commonly in the hospital setting is cool compresses. And that means just taking a washcloth, putting cold water on it, wring it out, and you want to place it like on the neck, the forehead, under the armpits, and even in the groin if the fever is really high. And it will do wonders as far as bringing a fever down kind of gradually. And you can re-wet it, make it cold again, and put it back under the arms. I don't recommend using ice packs if you have a fever, because that's going to start shivering and the fever is going to probably even get a little bit higher. Also, drinking cool beverages, because if you cool yourself from the inside, that is going to bring the fever down as well. So any kind of cool beverages, and you want to aggressively rehydrate anyway when you have a fever, because you're going to be sweating eventually, and you're going to need a little bit more fluid than you usually do. One other thing is remove any excess blankets, any excess layers of clothing, especially if a fever is getting over about 101.5. It gets very uncomfortable, and it may make the person feel a little bit cold. But go ahead and just put a light blanket on if they must cover up. For headache pain, get into a dark room and lie down. Put something cool over your eyes, something cool over your head. Try to sleep it off. A lot of times, even with a migraine, that will help. If you can find a medication like Excedrin migraine, it actually has acetaminophen in it, and if you can find that, that's something that may be very helpful. But also taking a nice warm shower where there's steam sometimes can relieve sinus congestion that can definitely contribute to a headache. So that may be helpful. One other thing I like to use is sinus nasal spray or a neti pot, especially if there's congestion associated with a headache, like kind of like sinus headache pain. A lot of times just getting unclogged and getting all of that sinus junk running out will make a very, very big difference. If you're having problems related to musculoskeletal pain, joints, muscles, lower back, that kind of thing, rice is always my go-to. It's rest, ice, compression, and elevation. So especially if it's a sprain or a muscle injury, that might be very helpful for you. We also can do gentle stretching, like, let's just say I've got a sore shoulder. You can take your shoulder and kind of like pull it across very, very gently to the point where you start to feel the stretch, but before you start feeling pain. Doing gentle range of motion exercises may be helpful. Again, never do anything to the point of pain, only to the point where you start to feel some resistance. Massage, compression of the area, like putting an elastic wrap around, can be very helpful. And then we've also got topical ointments, which are awesome. I love these because they tend to not really have a lot of systemic side effects like oral medication. So we've got things that are really strong, like diclofenac or Voltaren. It's now over the counter. We have had very good luck with that in my household with a few kind of chronic musculoskeletal things that are plaguing a couple of us. It worked wonderfully for me. There's also lidocaine that you can get. Lidocaine's a topical numbing agent. It comes in patches, it comes in creams, and you can put it on the area that's affected, and a lot of times it'll just kind of deaden the nerve sensation in that area. Things like menthol are also helpful in a similar way, and that would be like your BioFreeze, your Icy Hot. If you are into alternative medications, Epsom salt soaks are fabulous, and arnica gel is one that's also very popular. The other thing I want to suggest is a TENS unit might be something you want to invest in. You can get them at the pharmacy. You do not need a prescription, and it comes with sticky pads that can be reused a number of times. They usually run off of a couple of batteries, and it gives you just a little bit of an electrical stimulation. You put it between the area that hurts and your spine. So again, we'll say if I had an elbow injury, I'd want to put the TENS unit just north of where the injury is on either side, and it gives a little bit of an electrical sensation. It interrupts the pain sensation to the brain. So I've had good luck with that as well. And of course, we always have ice packs and heating pads as well. If you've not picked up a copy of this, it is available for shipping through Amazon or through Denham Lake Publishing. I will leave 2 links for those below. This is You're on Your Own, Preparing for the Impending Healthcare Crisis. I wrote this earlier this year and published it, and it has a lot of very helpful information in it that you may find beneficial to you or your family as we keep running into some of these overcrowding situations in healthcare settings, and we keep also noticing a lot of product shortages. It gives you some alternatives and different ways of thinking about managing your own health and wellness. All right, that's all I have for you today. I hope this is helpful. I'll leave a link to my blog post as well. Check me out on HillaryMcElhaney.com. If you have any chronic health conditions or any need for just general health coaching, if you're interested in getting well, getting fit, reach out to me on my website. I am very happy to provide individualized coaching, and I can do it online. I can do it by phone call, or we can have a Zoom session if that's more your cup of tea. Until then, stay safe and stay healthy. Bye.